Welcome to this CodeRage 10 session, prototyping an Object Pascal code editor with Firemonkey and Delphi for Windows and OSX. This is Eli M with fmxexpress.com. Our agenda for today is to cover the TrollEdge code editor. This includes the project goals, how the Firemonkey architecture worked to our advantage in this project, the target market for TrollEdge and how it is designed for the modern developer, the platforms TrollEdge supports, which are Windows and OSX, how to go about hiring Delphi freelancers worldwide, the layout, pitfalls, and design choices we used when building the code editor, the code completion engine we built in the process, what third-party libraries we leverage from the Delphi community, and finally, source control and deployment of the prototype into the wild. I'm going to give you a brief overview of TrollEdge before we dive into the rest of the session. So here I've got the TrollEdge project open in Delphi 10 Seattle. I'm using a couple different third-party plugins here. I've got the Parnassus Navigator with its mini-map over here on the right. I've got the Delphi IDE Colorizer, which is giving us this dark theme. I'm going to switch over to the design view of TrollEdge, and you can see here's all my non-visual components on the form, and here's a trick in Delphi 10 Seattle. You can hide those non-visual components now. And so now we're going to go ahead and compile TrollEdge and show you some of the different features that it has. So we're going to open up TrollEdge in itself. We're going to open up the umain pass file, and you can see when it opens up that it's also automatically detecting and opening the textual form version for this pass file, and you can scroll through that, see the different form elements and the pass file. So then we're going to split this version, and we're going to start viewing some of the other file types it supports. So you can see an XML version, you can see images, you can see here's the Delphi library, more XML files, here's a style file, Delphi project files. It can also view an Android APK and an iOS IPA file, see what different files are inside of those. It can open up an exe file, and you'll see that it will do a hex view of that. Switch back over here, open up another Pascal file, and then we're going to show some of the other features. So here's the options menu, which is actually a T-frame that loads up floating above everything else in the single form. And then it has full screen. You can toggle back out of full screen mode. You can zoom in, and we'll show you later how to do the zooming in and out using Firemonkey. We'll zoom back out. We'll switch the theme to a light theme, and you can see how that works. We'll switch back to the dark theme, and then we'll move on to the rest of the session. My main goals for building TrollEdge are listed here. Eating your own dog food, or dog fooding, is slang for testing out a product and seeing if it lives up to expectations. I've been writing about the mobile side of the Firemonkey framework since early 2014, and I wanted to evaluate desktop development with a real project. TrollEdge is the result of this evaluation. I wanted to prototype a quick code editor because I currently use other text editors with Delphi, and they are missing some features. I wanted to use a universal layout and code base instead of creating different forms or layouts for different platforms. The two targeted platforms are Windows and OSX, but making TrollEdge available on mobile in the future with very little additional work is also a goal. I wanted to create a useful tool for myself and other mobile developers to simplify mobile development in Windows and OSX. Lastly, I wanted to have Object Pascal syntax highlighting because I use Delphi for mobile development. The results speak for themselves. Let's take a look at the architecture of a Firemonkey application like TrollEdge. It was built using Delphi XE7, XE8, and now Delphi Seattle. TrollEdge is targeting Windows and OSX. Android and iOS are options, and I have compiled it to Android before, but it is not a target platform right now. You can see in the architecture diagram that there is a Delphi compiler for Win32, Win64, Mac OS X, Android, iOS 32, and iOS 64. The Windows installer for 32-bit created with Eno setup is 3.7 megabytes. The Windows installer for 64-bit, also packed with Eno setup, is 4.5 megabytes. The Mac OS X installer created with packages is 6.78 megabytes. The other code editors like Notepad++, Sublime Text, and TextPad are around 5 megabytes each, while Atom is 80 megabytes and Visual Studio Code is between 40 and 60 megabytes depending on the platform. The target market for TrollEdge is the modern developer who is using multiple programming languages and targeting multiple platforms. Loading up a directory where all your project files are stored and easily being able to navigate and search it can reduce development time. Here I've got the DPF iOS directory open in TrollEdge, and as you can see I can navigate through the various files in this directory, and then I can go down in the demos directory and I can navigate through the various different files that are available in the demos directory. And when I open a pass file, it automatically opens up the form file as well, so you can see them both in text format. And then I'll navigate over here to a different demo directory and open up those two files there. Useful functionality is find in files, so you can search deep within APIs quickly, and file spelunking so you can dig into various file formats and packages that each platform uses. So I've got TrollEdge here with the DPF iOS directory open, and as you can see there's a lot of different files in the DPF iOS library, and I want to search those files to find UI application. So I'm going to type in UI application right here, and then I'm going to do a search, and then it's going to show me where those instances are of the various files. So there's one there, another one there. We'll open this over in this one, and then we'll open this one over in this directory. So you can find and search for the various UI application instances in that big giant library. Syntax highlighting and code completion are a must because they make the job easier. According to the recent Stack Overflow survey, mobile developers like both dark and light themes, while desktop developers prefer a light theme. Supporting both is easy with Firemonkey styles. Here you can see the Stack Overflow survey for the IDE themes that people prefer, and you've got the dark theme here and the light theme. Desktop developers prefer light theme, and apparently mobile developers are split down the middle on that. Here is the TrollEdge dark and light themes in action. Let's click through some of these files, load them up in the editor, and then we'll switch over to the light theme and click some through these files, and you can see them in the editor. The modern developer doesn't only develop on a single platform either. Developers are using both Windows and Mac OS X simultaneously to deploy to Android, iOS, OS X, Windows, and the web. Providing binaries for both platforms gives you the same code editor where you need it when you need it. According to this Stack Overflow survey, developers use Windows and Mac over 70% of the time when developing their projects. Firemonkey has multiple platform support, which allows you to target all supported platforms with a single UI and code base. You can use if-def statements when needed to customize your app for specific platforms. If you haven't used conditional compilation and if-defs before, here is the Delphi doc wiki for that. You can see here at the top the debug section where it does if-def and then else and then end if, and then if you scroll down you can see the various different platforms that you can use and which compilers they will show up in. Windows and Mac OS X have different file formats and different directory structures. One example of this is where do you store your settings files. And so one thing I like to do when I'm prototyping is I just use param.str0, which is an old school way of getting the path and exe name of your currently running application, and then you can strip off the exe name and you have the path where you can save your setting files to. That works great well prototyping, but when you move to the deployment stage and then you start deploying and installing your application onto Windows and the Mac, you need to use the tpath get documents path for your settings, and that supports multiple users as well. And there's some other paths you can use as well, and you look those up separately, but you can switch over to the doc wiki here and you can see the explanation for Windows and Mac and that directory and what those paths actually are on the different operating systems. A multi-platform application like TrollEdge needs to handle the different file types, encodings, and directory structures. Compiling and deploying binaries for Windows and Mac OS X are pretty simple with Delphi. So I have the TrollEdge project open in Delphi Seattle here, and what we're going to do now is deploy the project to Mac OS X. I've got the project selected. I'm also in debug mode, so then we're going to click play up here, and it is going to compile and send it over to our Mac, which we have set up on VNC. Here's the PA server that it's going to connect to and load up on. And so here what it's doing is it is transferring the debug files here over to the Mac via Wi-Fi, and which can take a bit because these files are quite large. The other option is to change from the build configuration of debug to release, and you can deploy much faster. So we're going to wait that to copy the file over Wi-Fi and show up over on the Mac. And looks like it's completed. And look, it just loaded up through the PA server and launched it on the Mac here. And we are going to open the DPF iOS project directory and see the files running on the Mac. With TrollEdge, I utilized multiple developers around the world for the project. Upwork.com and Fiverr.com were both used to complete pieces of the project. Ivan from the Ukraine did most of the development of the editor itself via Upwork. The Ukraine can be a good country to hire from because their costs of living are very low. In fact, according to the recent Stack Overflow survey, it has the highest purchasing power for developers. Here is the Stack Overflow survey for the purchasing power of various countries worldwide, and as you can see, Ukraine is here at the top, followed by South Africa, United States, Australia, and Russia. So that's one reason why we like to hire out of the Ukraine. Fedor from Belarus built the plugin system and the code completion engine via Upwork. Fiverr was used to have a logo created at a very low cost. So here's Fiverr.com. We just went on their website and we searched for logo, and then we picked one of the options and hired the freelancer. I have been leveraging Upwork.com, formerly called Odesk, since 2012 to hire freelancers to solve specific pieces in various projects like this. My company has had massive success using this freelancing platform and have paid out over $50,000 to various freelancers over the last 3 years. Currently, we are utilizing 17 freelancers worldwide through Upwork, everywhere from California to Serbia to Belarus to Bangladesh to the Philippines and Singapore. When hiring through Upwork, one of the most important things to understand is the culture for the country you are hiring a freelancer from. Be aware of the various holidays, standard of living, average wages, language skills, and mentality of developers from the countries you hire from. For fairness, I only hire developers by the hour and require developers to use the Upwork Time Tracker application. The Time Tracker takes a screenshot every 10 minutes or so and provides them to you for review. You can keep track of what your freelancers are working on while they are billing you. Payments happen automatically once a week, so there is never any friction with the freelancers about payments. Some projects will not go as planned and some will be over budget. Have contingency plans. One strategy is to hire 2 or 3 developers for the same task if budget allows. Here is the Upwork website with all their information, and they also have an online work report which you can check out, and it shows how many people are working and how much they're spending on online work. They got some various graphs here. That's for 2014. Categories of work. Admin, support, technology. The growth rate of each category. Mobile is number 1. How many people are registered on Elance Odesk, which is now called Upwork. The top hiring countries. United States over here. The top earning countries. Ukraine is right here. The fastest growing positions, customer service, UI design, hot skills, QA testing. And then finally I'll switch over and show you, here is an example work diary, Fedor working on the code completion project. And so you can see this is one day, and you can click on and zoom in to each screenshot of what he was working on at various times during the day. For the layout of TrollEdge, we surveyed some other code editors which are very similar and utilized the built-in T-Multiview component to achieve a similar look with the navigation pane on the left and the syntax memo controls on the right. We had some issues with the interaction of T-Multiview and some of our third-party components under Delphi XE8. We switched from T-Multiview to just a straight panel, but would like to bring it back now that we are using Delphi Seattle and take advantage of its new Windows 10-like functionality. So this panel here is where we were using the T-Multiview component and that we replaced with a T panel. And as you can see, it looks like it would be perfect to bring back that T-Multiview component now that it has new functionality in Delphi 10 Seattle. We set up the syntax memo layout to handle 3 memo controls side by side. Frames were used so that the layout for the memos was only built once. So here I've got TrollEdge open in Delphi Seattle, and you can see my 3 frames here. Only one currently is visible. So let's make the other 2 visible so we can see them in the project. So visible. Now all 3 frames should be visible there. And so the frames are like a component that you design visually. And so I'm going to go over to the frame. And so over here you can see we have the TMS FMX memo component. So there's only one instance of this frame, and then we have it embedded 3 different times within the form, and that makes up our 3 side-by-side syntax memo components. One pitfall we ran into was that we tried to only select components that will work on all platforms, but some components like T main menu and T pop-up were used and are not available for mobile. Those components will need to be replaced or modified to fully support mobile platforms in the future. The syntax memo component area is placed within a single T layout, which allows the entire thing to be scaled up and down at will, zooming in and out on the controls. So I have the TrollEdge source code open in Delphi Seattle here, and we're going to show you the layout, the zoom layout. So we've got a T layout here with our various other controls. We've got the syntax memo layout, we have our tab control here, all inside of the zoom layout. And then if we go over to the code view, you can see we've got 2 actions. We have a zoom in execute and a zoom out execute. And what that does is it changes the scale of that main T layout. And then we will run this project and test it out. And we will open a file. How about this file right here? And then we'll zoom in, zoom in, zoom in. And you can see that the whole entire layout scale is changing, and all of its subcomponents are changing as well. And then you can zoom back out. And that's the zooming functionality. Originally the options section was its own form, but was turned into a frame and integrated as a panel instead to better support mobile and to keep the app to a single form. So we have the options frame here open in Delphi Seattle, and what we've got going on is we have a T-grid panel layout with 3 across and 3 down, and I've got an individual layout in each of those sections, and then in the center section I have an individual layout, and all of my pieces are in the individual layout. And then I've got a background rectangle which has an opacity of 0.9, and this whole thing is a frame, and it's going to sit over the top of this form when we run and test it. It used to be a separate window, but I integrated it so that we can better support mobile in the future. So we load up TrollEdge here, and we open up the options menu, and you can see here's the background rectangle shading over the top of everything behind this panel, and then you go change these other options, and this is a tab view, and that's the options menu. I had asked Ivan from the Ukraine what feature he would most like to see in a code editor, and his response was code completion. Fedor from Belarus put over 100 hours into building the code completion engine. It was developed using the Delphi abstract syntax tree library. It recursively parses the units in the uses clause and caches them out as JSON. A trees or digital tree is used to quickly look up the classes in the code completion engine. Here is the Wikipedia entry for a digital tree, and there's a small diagram here that shows you how it works in theory. The Object Pascal code completion engine has been open sourced separately from TrollEdge and can be found on GitHub. We wouldn't have been able to create TrollEdge without third-party components and libraries. We specifically picked these libraries because of their multi-platform support and speed in some cases. We used the syntax highlighting memo control from TMS Pack for Firemonkey. TMS software worked with us to expose some additional functionality we needed in the memo control. Here is the TMS software website for the TMS Pack for Firemonkey, which contains the TMS FMX memo component. And the TMS FMX memo component is the component that has the syntax highlighting and enables code completion events. And here's, you can zoom in and see there's the example under Windows, under Mac OS X, and under an iPad. Pax compiler is used to provide a script interpreter engine for the plugin system. Here is the website for the Pax compiler component, and you can read about the various functionalities that Pax compiler offers you and the different platforms. And then over here you can see a breakdown of the various components and the languages that it supports. Delphi was used in a number of places to reduce the amount of code we needed to write. It made it easy to apply settings to all three syntax memo components with only a few lines of code. Delphi was originally available from Google Code, and you can see it here has explanations of it and how you can use it. And then if you click over to GitHub, there's also a version converted over there, and this is the FMX example of Delphi, and it shows you how to use it in various instances. For example, right here you can check all the components that have select all and apply these calls against them. And there's more information over at the arcana.civ.com website as well, which is the website of the author of this library. We brought in CCR Clipboard to add in file drag and drop capabilities on Windows and OS X. Here is the CCR Clipboard project on GitHub, and you can find out more information about it and download it for yourself. Talks about the platforms, talks about the drag and drop support, and this is in the wiki section as well, and talks about platform specific features. HS FMX hints was brought in to provide mouse over hints, which are also natively provided in Delphi Seattle, but were not available in Delphi XE7 and XE8. The FMX hints library is actually available as part of the source code from the cross-platform development with Delphi XE7 and Firemonkey for Windows and Mac OS X book that Harry Stahl has put out. So that is one useful library you can get with the book. The code completion engine was created by Fedor from Belarus separately and released on GitHub as its own engine and demo. Here is the site on GitHub for the code completion engine. You can see all the source code here and read more about it and the license that governs the code completion engine. And here's the different libraries that it specifically uses. Delphi AST is the core of the code completion engine. It parses the Object Pascal files and turns them into abstract syntax trees. Here's the Delphi AST library over on GitHub. You can check out the source code and download it, read more about it. There's also a sample input. This is what you would pass to the Delphi AST library, and then you would get this outcome from that input, and you could use that in your own project. The abstract syntax trees are cached as JSON using the blazing fast cross-platform JSON library called JSON Data Objects. The JSON Data Objects library is available on GitHub. You can download it and check out the source code. Here's more information about it, and there are some various examples there on how to use it. Here's the first one, simple example. You can create from a JSON string and then access the objects, and then here you can set new objects within the JSON string, and finally over here you can copy JSON objects with a sign. The OXML library was chosen for its fast multi-platform XML capabilities. It is used for handling the XML results from Delphi AST. Here is the OXML library website. You can see all the different features, what versions of Delphi it supports, what platforms it supports, all the different features here. You can see examples on how to parse XML with the library, and you can also see their benchmarks that they've got against other similar XML libraries in Object Pascal. While researching how to do a code completion engine, we found that one method uses trees, otherwise known as digital trees. We found an existing trees class as part of a SV collections library. The SV collection trees library is available over on Bitbucket in the Delphi OOP project, and you can click over to the core section and then to the SV collection trees library, and there is all the source code for that library. Let's talk about deploying the source and the binaries cross-platform. For source control to sync up my version of the source code with GitHub, I use the GitHub desktop client. The client uses a huge amount of memory, but it is super simple to use. Apparently it provides the same interface on Windows and Mac OS X. Here is the website for the GitHub desktop client. You can read more about it and download it for Windows and Mac. Scroll through here, look a little bit at it, and then I'll show you my version that has TrollEdge in it here. And you can click back and see various different changes in the previous versions. For binary deployment, on the Windows side there is enosetup, which is a mature install creation tool written in Delphi, and it's free, so that pretty much makes it a no-brainer to use. There is an add-on for it that provides a wizard to automatically create the scripting files needed to easily deploy your apps. So here's the website for enosetup, and you can see all the features it supports. You can see that it supports 7-zip, which is great because that's maximum compression. You can download it over here on third party. You can see the enosetup Studio, which is the GUI front end, which you should check out. I'm going to go over that site and see the features it supports. And here's the screenshot of the different options it gives you while setting it up. And then I'm going to bring over the script. This is enosetup right here, and here's the script that it created for TrollEdge. And then I'm going to bring over the setup file that I've run, and you can see that that's the wizard that it created out of that script. For binary deployment on the Mac OS X side, first I tried using a DMG or disk image file and providing zip and 7-zip files. However, I noticed that the Delphi PA server had an installer, so after searching for something similar to that, I ran across Packages. Packages is an open source tool that creates an installer type setup file for the Mac. It lets you deploy to specific directories and everything else you would want from a professional installer. I must say it is a way better solution than deploying a DMG file. So here's the website for the Packages install creator for the Mac. Here you can see the screenshot of more information. Click over the resources, see more information about all the different stuff about the Packages application. You can see the technical specifications here. You can download it, and then I'm going to switch over and I'm going to go to the actual installed application. And so here it is with my TrollEdge project open. You can see its different windows and settings, and then the payload, the TrollEdge directory installs in the applications directory on the Mac. You set that up there, then you just build your PKG file, package file, and then when you run your PKG file, it looks like this, and you can install your project. The TrollEdge source code is available now on GitHub, and you can download the installers for the TrollEdge prototype from trolledge.com. You can file bug reports in the issues section on GitHub at github.com/fmxexpress/trolledge. Here is that website right now. You can see the source code, and then if you scroll farther down, you'll get to the features, and you can see all the features for TrollEdge. Here is the link to the binaries and the source code. That's it for this session. Be sure to evaluate Firemonkey for your next multi-platform project, and thanks for watching.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Eli, for that great session, breaking down all the components and such, and the architecture went into your TrollEdge editor.
Great to be here.
Fantastic. So one of the questions that came up here is, what version of Delphi is needed to build the project?
Delphi Seattle, so the newest version.
Okay. And I saw you were using the Firemonkey hints library. Is there a reason you went with that over the ones that were added in Seattle, or?
So we originally built it in Delphi XE7 and XE8, which did not have the hints functionality.
Okay. That's
and
what I was
so
wondering.
we use that library, but now we could switch to the Delphi Seattle hints system.
Okay. Would it be possible to create a moderately capable general text editor, which looks like kind of what you did, because yours more a programmer text editor, and how hard would it be to add footnotes?
I'm sure it would be not too difficult to create just a general text editor. The tricky thing that I ran into was that, so one of the text editors I use, they've been programming on it for 15 years, and so it can open really large files, and it does this virtual viewing of the file, and it just works flawlessly. And so you'd have to get that kind of functionality, you'd have to figure out those techniques to get a virtual view of large files like that.
Yeah, that's something I tried implementing text editor before, and as soon as I went to open a big file, I was like, oops, because I was loading it all up in memory, and that didn't work.
Yeah. So, I do have a 64-bit version up there, and so that allows you to open much larger files as well.
Mm-hmm. So is this something that you have a business model around the TrollEdge editor, or is it just kind of an experiment to see what's involved in building a useful editor?
It was mainly just an experiment. I invested in some money into it, but I don't really have any business model plans for the future for it.
But as far as paying the outsourcers to make the editor and then give it away as open source, it just was mostly for your education.
This is my hobby, and I like to do this kind of stuff.
Okay. So instead of paying for greens fees, you pay outsourcers to build the code for you.
That's right.
What are some of the advantages it has over Seattle, the IDE, the Seattle 10 IDE?
Well, it runs on Mac OS X, so that's one advantage. And so you can just it opens really quickly. You can use it side by side with Delphi 10, and so you got Delphi 10 in one window. You can have code TrollEdge in another window. You can have three side by side files open over there that you can look at that, and then what I do is, so I got Delphi over on my left screen, and then I have TrollEdge on my right, and I use the search functionality to search the Delphi RTL for whatever it is I'm looking for, and then I can bring that up and reference that at the same time that I'm using Delphi 10 Seattle.
Yeah, and you mentioned before that you had used some other programming editors and I was in the same boat. I used Notepad++ a lot because occasionally you just want something quick to get in there and do some things. And so yeah, it's definitely useful to have multiple editors on multiple screens or however you're using it.
Right.
When did you originally start with the project?
Maybe, I don't know, 2-3 months ago. And so one of the freelancers, Ivan, he put in 125 hours, and then Fedor put in over 100 hours. I'm not quite sure how many hours, but so over a 3-month period, we created it.
Okay. Does it support RTF formats?
No, it's not. It's a code editor, not really a rich text editor. Though it could easily be added because TMS has all those rich text controls. You just put it in there. It's an RTF, and then you load up that control instead.
That's true.
And so it's currently at version 0.53, I believe. And so keep in mind that it is a beta prototype, and it is what it is.
Yep. Do you recommend Harry Stahl's book?
I don't necessarily recommend it or not recommend it. I found it useful because it has a bunch of tips that you would not otherwise know unless you found out for yourself when you're developing on Mac OS X. And so if you need those tips and it saves you 2, 3, 4 hours, then you win.
Yep. I had a friend that bought pretty much every Delphi book that came across or anything even remotely related because he figured, if you save a couple hours worth of work just because of something you found in that book, it's worthwhile.
Exactly.
Did you hand code the abstract syntax tree or use a library?
We used the Delphi. That Delphi AST is a library that we used. It's available on GitHub too.
Yep, that's the ones used by the Fixit library, Fixit IDE enhancement.
Correct.
So Alf's asking if he had a project where he could needed to include an editor, would it be possible to use the TrollEdge editor in his project?
Absolutely. It's under my code is under BSD license, and then all the other libraries you'd have to look at their individual licenses. I'm pretty sure that most of them you can probably use. You may have to get some licenses. For example, you need to own the TMS pack for Firemonkey, and then you may need a commercial license for the OXML library.
Okay. So what was the total, I don't know if you said this or not, the total number of hours by all developers combined?
I'm not sure. I mean, if my two guys each put in 125 hours, that's 250, and I put in maybe 50 on it, so 300 hours maybe. I don't even know that I put in 50, maybe 275.
Okay.
And so that's only the code that we built, though. If you go back and look at all the different libraries that we utilized and didn't have to write ourselves, I mean, that was an amazing amount of hours that we got to use for free, really.
Yep. Or even like the TMS libraries, if you're licensing those, it's still a lot of leverage for a little bit of money, really.
Right.
Could the syntax editor be incorporated into other Delphi projects?
Sure. I mean, like I said, it's under a BSD license, and so the syntax memo itself is just a TMS control. I mean, I forget how much the TMS pack for Firemonkey is, but all that functionality for the syntax coloring and everything, that's all part of the memo control itself. So we didn't actually have to write any of that. We just used that component and we were done.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Cool. So I didn't notice, did you have features like integrating into the Delphi IDE, for example, to build a project from TrollEdge, or to perhaps maybe move open files between TrollEdge and Delphi?
Well, theoretically, it supports drag and drop. I haven't tested whether you can drag and drop a file between TrollEdge and Delphi or not. And then I did look at having an option where you could push build and it would compile your project, but we haven't got that far. I mean, mainly my goal with the integration for the IDE was being able to search the RTL very quickly, because I do that a lot when you're doing mobile development. You want to find out, oh, well, how did they do this Android API? And so you search the RTL for that Android string and find how it was coded, and then you can go use that in your code.
Yeah. Cool. Can you compile on OS X without having Delphi available?
No, it's not. It's just a code editor. It's not a compiler.
Okay. And how did you get involved in programming?
All right. So somewhere around 1986, my parents' friends sold us an 8088 or something like that, X086.
Yep.
And it had and she gave us a disk with some games on it that were written in GW Basic. And so we played those games. And then we also got the Ranger Rick magazine, which came with the program it came with code in the magazine you have to type out in the GW Basic. And so that's where it all started.
Yeah, I started with Basic as well. I remember, though, when I made the transition from Basic to Pascal, Turbo Pascal, I was just like, oh, my goodness, this is so much better. Why didn't I ever use Basic before?
Yeah, so Delphi 3 was my first version.
Okay. It's interesting, actually, thinking about it just now. When I made that jump from Basic to Pascal, it was, like, huge. But since then, I've learned, C#, Java, JavaScript, a number of other languages, and all the other languages I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, but none of them have ever been that huge. Wow, this is so amazing. And then when I go out and do presentations to other developer groups that people that know Java or know C# or Objective C, and I show them stuff we can do with Delphi, and they're like, wow, why have I not been using this? It certainly has that wow.
My favorite component, which you guys talked about earlier, is T string list. And I use and abuse it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
When I go to other languages, I'm like, where is the string list component? I don't understand why you guys don't have this component.
Oh, you don't want to know how many times I've re-implemented string list in other languages. So were you mostly self-taught, or did you get a degree, or what'd you get from point A to point B, I guess?
Self-taught. I mean, the only college I had was I went and took the entrance exams, and that was the end of that for that. And so, yeah, I bought Delphi 3, and so basically I learned programming. I mean, I did GW Basic, right? But I learned programming with Delphi 3. And so Delphi was my first programming language, and I use lots of other languages too. I use ActionScript, I use PHP, I use all kinds of other web languages and stuff, but I really love Object Pascal. Yeah.
I'm in the same boat as you. I've made the tour of other languages, and I'm happy to be back using Delphi. All right, well, fantastic. Thank you so much, Eli, for this presentation and for all you do on fmxexpress.com.
All right, great. Thank you.
Actually, I guess you have a whole family of websites now. Firemonkey Explorer and...
I do, FMX University and FiremonkeyX.com and all kinds of stuff.
Like every time I come out there, there's like, oh, a whole new website. Look at this. All right, great. Well, thank you so much, and thanks to everybody else for joining us for day one of CodeRage. Wow, I can't believe day one's already over. It's been a long day. I think a few of you have been here all day, too, it looks like.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.